Gary, what the fuck? We're here on the weekend.
Yeah, who would have thought? You know, welcome everybody to again to the Turn One podcast. We've got an emergency episode. Some late breaking news yesterday. I'm Gary, that's Joe, and we have a special guest by the name of Scott Ramler.
He's down there.
So,
Hello,
He's right
everybody.
there. Right there.
right there. Okay.
Don't point down.
Anyways,
Point straight
point.
down. I'll point this way. There we go.
Okay,
Just look
Perfect.
for
there
the
we
guy
go.
with more hair on his head than Gary and Joe.
Woo, got us.
Zing.
Anyways, so we have an emergency episode today because we're going to talk about the IndyCar Series. Some recent talks fired up again yesterday, Joe, about a charter system and how that will be implemented for this year's Indy 500 potentially.
So this is how it played out. Yesterday, Scott went and said, "Did you see this?" And I said, "No." He went and showed me a video, but who was the video, Scott?
It was done by Black Flags Matter.
So I went on and found this article right here, which started the shit show, and we're going to talk about it because I'm fired up about it because Roger Penske is a dick.
Are we
Anyways,
past the 30-second mark?
I don't give a shit. Anyways, if anybody at all knows anything about IndyCar history, we have had numerous splits because these same people all the fucking time have to sit there and put their noses in places they don't belong. Roger, get your head out of your ass. Get rid of the charter system. Get rid of the talks for it at all because you're not only going to ruin the series, but you're going to ruin the Indy 500. And I'm going to tell you something right now. The Indy 500 is a fucking tradition in my house. It's a tradition in everybody that is part of this podcast house. And you're royally pissing off the fans. You are not listening to us at all. Anyways, I'm going to let Scott explain what was said yesterday in that video, and then we'll continue on. I needed to get that rant out, or else I wasn't going to have a clear head.
Right. So, looking at the video by Black Flags Matter and a couple of the associated articles, the series is looking to move toward a NASCAR style charter system. And while most people were either unaware of how that system works, being that they don't watch NASCAR, the teams are able to buy their way into a contract where they are not only guaranteed a spot to start on the grid, but they also get a piece of the broadcasting um, income as well that ends up getting split with the tracks and the promoters and everything along those lines to help bring in more money for the series, which overall sounds like a good idea until you look at how it was implemented within NASCAR and how it's supposedly going to be implemented within the IndyCar series, especially when it comes to massive traditions like the Indy 500. The idea of a guaranteed spot in the Indy 500 has really upset a lot of people because that was always part of the pageantry involved with it. It didn't matter where you were in the standings. It didn't matter if you were some guy that's only going to come to run this one race out of the season. You had a shot to get in so long as you were fast enough in the fastest 33 start. The where this is derailed the entire talks of the charter is especially looking back on the 28-5 rule that was brought in during the IndyCar split, is really kind of sullied that tradition. They ended up going back to the fastest 33 shortly thereafter due to backlash from a number of the teams as well as the fans. To then go and repeat that history and essentially go down the same track for funding purposes really has the opportunity to destroy the tradition of the month of May. Similar to, say, NASCAR's getting rid of speed weeks for Daytona. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Gary, you live in near Indianapolis, so what do you think this is going to have an effect on as far as the local community?
I honestly, I'm not a fan of this at all. I don't think you should guarantee spots into the Indy 500. At that point, you might as well just call it the participation trophy at Indianapolis Motor Speedway presented by Gainbridge. That's what you should call it, because we're just going to give out participation trophies to everybody in the sport. Oh, hey, you want to race every week? Okay, here you go. You're automatically in. We shouldn't be doing that. That 25-8 rule, that sounds a lot like the 25-8 rule, only you're going to be doing that every week. To me, it eliminates bumping. It eliminates the whole drama of pole day and bump day. It gets rid of all that. Like you said, the pageantry of being able to get into this darn race. Um, we are entering a slippery slope if they do this charter system. And we've already seen IndyCar over the last couple of years, particularly with the Indianapolis 500, do NASCAR things. We might as well just go to green, white checkers if you want to go ahead and do a charter system too. And I know that would fire up a lot of people.
Oh yeah, that would warrant another
Well,
emergency episode.
so here's here's the things that I've read over the last 24 hours from the fallout from this article. All right. They've actually gone on to say that the teams are there's some teams that are open, all right, to a charter system, all right. There are other teams that are not. They went and have presented numerous charter, proposals to the teams, and there've been, several owners and representatives that have backlashed on that. Well, to kind of speed up the process of this article here, um, and try to get it implemented before the 500, they're actually looking at, well, we're gonna take this group and we're gonna take this group of people, all right, and we're gonna shrink it. They're looking at only taking 4 teams and looking at those, and working with those teams. Now we all know in
So
IndyCar,
basically, it's
those
going to be
teams are gonna be
Penske,
Penske,
Ganassi, Andretti. Who's the fourth?
McLaren.
Man, come on. So we're only going to benefit those 4 programs.
Well, it's not going to be benefiting those 4 programs. It's those
Well,
4
they're writing the
programs
system.
that are going to end up are the ruling class of IndyCar, and you're basically you've gone from being something prestige and having a niche in motorsports, all right, as a whole, and you're trying to be like the next guy, all right, and the next guy's trying to be like the big guy, all right, and it's not going to work. All right, NASCAR is fighting their teams right now because of the charter things, and that that shit's already out of control. What's the price of a charter right now? 40 million for one car.
Something like that, 40 million for one car.
All
And,
right, so you're
they
spending.
haven't even come to a new agreement yet with the new TV rights deal coming up. And NASCAR, I don't know if they're in a spot where they just want to take it away and the teams want it or what the case is there, but there's a big fight about it right now amongst the team owners. And, you're basically having the same thing here. You're only going to let 3 or 4 teams decide how the charter system is going to work. In my opinion, it needs to be unanimous or none at all. And I'm sick and tired of these team owners trying to sit here and make money in motorsports. What have I said time and time again over the last couple weeks? If you're looking to make money in racing, it ain't gonna happen. This is supposed to be a fun thing, and yet we're all caught up in the business model or the money model here to make a quick buck. Like, get your head out of your butts. We shouldn't have a charter system, and just come in here and race the best you can. Maybe if Bobby Rahal didn't focus all their time and effort in IMSA, they would have been really competitive in the Indy 500 this year and wouldn't have an entry miss the race. And I think that's what those teams are scared of, is missing the race. If you miss the race, you suck. You're too slow. Try again next year.
And what's gonna stop somebody who's got a wad of money in their wallet from going and saying, hey, I'm gonna sit here and go buy my ride. I better, and let's say they had enough money to sit there and buy, let's say, a seat over at Penske. All right. And, I want to, I'm fully funding this. Here's $10 million for the Indy 500. I know I can be fast. All right. I'm going to go race the Indy 500. Let's just sit there and say, hey, why can't, I paid an astronomical amount of money to get in this race and I'm really fast and, shit. There's a whole plethora of shit that that's going to be killed by a charter system in IndyCar. And we just started seeing car counts, getting higher here. And
Yeah, it's going to kill the car
you're
count. You'll be lucky to fill a whole field of 33.
I mean, what are they going to do too? Are they going to? You got teams that have been around for years. You got Foyt, Coyne, who other
Pure
was it
racers.
Ed
Ed
Carpenter
Carpenter.
Racing. All right, you got those little teams that have been around for years. What are they going to do? Are they going to give them a free charter? Are they going to be like, oh, we're just going to grandfather you in. You've got, you've been with us for a while. You've won races with us. You've won poles with us. You've been really good to the series. All right, we're going to sit here and we're going to hand out the charters. All right. That at that point you're just sitting there saying, well, you know what? This is just a gentleman's club that that a certain few are only going to be part of.
Right.
I mean, we've talked about it numerous times in the past, all right, or in the last, I don't know.
There was a really good post on social media that Connor Daly put out. He mentioned it in his podcast. If you guys haven't watched it, you need to watch it because he's spitting nothing but facts in that. And he basically said, you might as well just stop calling it the Indy 500. You might as well just, get rid of all the traditions that go with it.
We'll include the link to that video in the description of the broadcast tonight.
Now, I just had a thought here. For any of the uninitiated people that are unfamiliar with IndyCar and are unfamiliar with the backlash that this is garnering, would either one of you like to go into what exactly the entire process of the month of May is? Because a lot of people are probably thinking, oh, it's just a qualifying format. It's not that big of a deal. Can one of you expound on not only what the process is and it basically being a qualifying session, but what it actually means to go through the entire month of May and just give a quick rundown?
Well, which way do you want it? Do you want it the way that it had been for 90 years? Or do you want the current format of how it all works? Because the way it was, for when it was, for all the years before they decided to, decided to run a Grand Prix.
I'm looking more for the current format as it is, because the format as it is now has been in place since the 28.5 rule was abolished, if I'm correct.
No, because
a little bit of missing there because we have that Grand Prix race in there now, which kind of killed the entire month of May being full of practice days. To me, it all really starts at the open test for me. Early to mid-April, they have an open test where they invite all the teams that are going to be racing in the upcoming 500 to this test. That's when you really get to see where guys are at with their programs, who's going to be fast, who might not be fast. You can get a decent gauge on your Indy 500 prep right there in that April test. And then, of course, early May, first weekend of May, we're back at the racetrack. We're on the road course. You do the Grand Prix, get that all out the way, and then basically the first Monday in May after the Grand Prix is when you have the opening day for practice, either Monday or Tuesday, weather pending, right? And to me, that is when you have your practice. They practice their qualifying pace most of that week. Then we get up into Fast Friday, and then that next day is when that's when the qualifying and when the magic happens really for the fans. Is the qualifying procedures? Sure, people make a big deal about that as it's only this qualifying thing. No, it's just being able to see a little team like Dreyer and Reinbold that only come in once a year. They only have like 6 full-time employees or something like that. and they are able to smash two cars together, and they go out and make the race every year. It's little stories like that where these teams maybe only field a car or two, and they're only there for Indy making the race.
Yeah. So Ed Carpenter Racing, right? Used to be, oh well, we're only gonna run, this is all we're gonna do. It was Vision Racing, remember?
Yeah, they
Vision
only they
Racing,
only ran basically the ovals. Yeah,
yeah, and well, at one point they were only running Indy 500s, and they would make the fucking race. All right,
handedly too. They were like mid pack,
they
comfortably in the race.
the way it used to be, all right, and for as long as I can remember, it was you had pretty much 2 weeks of practice ahead of the first qualifying weekend, right? Right? It's 2 days. The person at the end of the week that was the fastest person, that was it. All right? They had the pole position. So then you get another week of practice. You got teams sitting there trying to work on race setups, and then you have other teams sitting there trying to, make the show. Then you have another 2 days of you have another 2 days of qualifying, right? And once the field was filled, you started bumping people out of the race, right? And it was whoever was the slowest guy got bumped out. Not this, Graham Rahal shit where I got bumped out of the race. I'm going to go buy a seat. Well, hold on. There were
He
plenty
didn't
of times
buy
that there was plenty of times that it had happened. Or we can go to the
like with Brian Hunter-Reay
or the Lynn
that one
St.
year.
James where we started 35 cars a year. Because the fastest qualifiers weren't in the race, changing the rules on the fly. Yay, way to go, USAC. But anyways,
Way to pull a NASCAR USAC. Good
yeah,
job.
yep. Anyways, there's too much prestige and lore with the Indianapolis 500 to sit here and do the 20 to do a charter system. I mean, it was who Scott, was this you that went and said this? Fine, do your charter system, but don't include the Indy 500. Somebody said it
Right.
last night in Discord, and this is why I didn't want to say. This is why I didn't want to talk much about it yesterday because of that. It was because we were gonna forget shit. I think it
That's
was
right.
you.
That was me that said that, and is someone who is a relatively recent IndyCar fan that got into it probably around 2016, 2017. Um, seeing everything that leads up to the Indy 500, the only thing that even compares to this setup would be Daytona Speed Weeks for NASCAR, which hasn't been a thing since the pandemic, I
Yeah.
believe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an entirely different process. The the way everything goes, I don't care about the rest of the season. You have the Super Bowl with the NFL, you have the Daytona 500 with NASCAR. You don't sully the traditions that made those events huge for your sport. NASCAR has gone down that road already.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen the chaos that ensued in Daytona, with just every decision NASCAR has made since the early 2000s has seemed to go completely the wrong direction. And IndyCar has made a number of decisions going down that way. The Motorsports Games contract,
Mm-hmm.
um, the lack of new car designs for the length that they've had, the drivers aren't happy.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that remained consistent throughout all of these hardships was the Indy 500. You have what was the final fan count that we had at the race? It was something like 323,000 people on site.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably not including the employees. It's probably even more than that.
Yeah,
But
the biggest crowd that I went to was the 100th race, and they had 800,000 people. And mind you, the population of Indianapolis at that time back in 2016, uh, it was about 800,000 people. So the population of Indianapolis doubled for one race, for one freaking day. Like they had over 1 million people in that town. And, as much as we're talking about Daytona, they went from having over 60 entries, late 90s, early 2000s to barely getting 43 for a 40 car field.
Right.
And IndyCar's in that same boat right now. It's a 33 car race, and you're barely getting 35, 36 cars to go for 33 spots.
Yeah,
Right.
My
And
fear
but
is if you go to this charter system, the 33 cars, you're just going to get 33, or you're just going to get the charter teams of the 25 or 28, however many they want to have, and you're just going to lose everything that you've gained over the last 100 years is going to be gone.
right. And
not even
going
the
back
last.
to going back to the local impact that this is going to have on not just the speedway, but Indianapolis as a whole for the local economy. The city basically shuts itself down on the
Pretty much.
when the track opens up.
Yeah.
It is one of the most incredible things that I have ever witnessed, to see that many people showing up from all over the world. And it's not even just the race itself. We have people come in for the free practices. They come in for the qualifying sessions. Then once you get the qualifying sessions done, everybody wants to see the Fast 12. Then it moves down to the Fast 6. And all of this is predicated on a completely different qualifying format than you see in NASCAR or Formula One, where it's your fastest lap grants you your position in the race. You have to go out there and run 4 laps at
Flat out.
4 laps flat out. Your average of those 4 laps determines where you are in the order. Then you have to fight for it again in the Fast 12 and again in the Fast 6 for pole. Then you move to bump day, and they fill out the last 3 rows of the race by having everyone that didn't make the cut into the top 30 fight for those positions. And it's such a unique way of going about it that
You can't replicate it.
it's an entire show in and of itself. Like, the race is one thing. You don't like being around tons and tons of people during a race day, you can sit at a bar and watch it. Whatever. Go up there for qualifying, you still get to see cars on track, and it's a heart-pounding experience from beginning to end, because one single mistake or one wrong adjustment on these cars, and you're not making the show.
Or you're wrecking while
Or
you're
you're
out
wrecking.
there. Right.
Quite spectacularly, which Indianapolis is famous for.
Yeah. I mean, I was there last year for pole day. That entire qualifying weekend there, Saturday and Sunday. That was the most people I've seen for qualifying, probably in my lifetime. Because when I was born, you had the rumblings of the split around 94, 95, 96. Seeing it wasn't even half full, like comparative to the grandstands, because the grandstands hold 250,000 all around the racetrack. There was a solid 80,000 people there last year. And just to see the fans, you could hear the roar of the crowd on TV. You couldn't hear that before. Actually, it was kind of cool. I went with Peyton to the infield in turn 1 because he was taking photos, and I was just watching the cars go through turn 1, that kind of thing. But to hear the roar of the crowd from inside the track being in the infield gave me chills. And that's what you go for the Indy 500 for. It's just the chills and the hype of the crowd. And I tell you what, on race day, I know this has nothing to do with the charter system right now. When you go there on race day and it's just silence and you hear the national anthem and you hear taps, if that don't give you, if that, you could hear a pin drop. Absolutely. If you don't get chills or goosebumps, you might be dead. Like, that is just that's the greatest experience that you'll ever have at any sporting event.
I must be a zombie because, let's see, some people were said that when I purchased Speedway, I'm not fuck with tradition. And funny, look at where we're at now. But, fuck you, put Roger Penske. See,
sell the series, Roger. Sell the series.
Yeah, I've been saying that for a while. Keep the track, sell the series.
I put that in my
But-
notes. Keep the track, sell the series.
But you know, for I'm a guy who saw firsthand with the kart IndyCar split. It was devastating to both series. All right, like it destroyed open wheel racing for a very long time in the United States. They finally got their heads out of their ass. They went and reunified, and they have built on it for forever. All right,
15 years, 15, 16 years. Yeah.
I've sat in the stands at Indianapolis and IndyCar races. All right, both kart and IndyCar, and the 90s were great. We were elbow to elbow. All right, you couldn't move. There were so many people. It was the hottest thing to watch. And then the split happened, and I remember going to Milwaukee, and it's like, oh wow, look at that, we have seats next to us that are wide open. Or you go to Chicagoland Speedway, where they said it is sold out. Yeah, you sold it out because when you sold your fucking tickets, you sold it as a package. You sold both weekends, NASCAR and IndyCar, all right, and forced people to do that, and then they ended up either getting suckered into keeping the tickets for the IndyCar race and never went, or they sold them off, or they went and didn't like it because those were the people that were walking out halfway through the race going, oh, this isn't fun because it's not NASCAR. It goes, you, not roar, roar, roar. All right? Trust me, I've seen it. All right?
Do we have that as a soundbite clip?
I'll work on it. Anyways, I've seen a lot. All right, you had the USAC kart split back in '81. You have the IRL kart split of '94 or '95, and I don't see if they end up going through with this charter system, and there's all this backlash from teams.
You're gonna have another split, and it's not gonna survive.
You're not gonna have another split. You're gonna lose teams and cars. And I'm going to tell you right now, don't be surprised that Michael Andretti or Bobby Rahal go and say, you know what, I've had enough of this bullshit. We're out of here. They have very budding sports car series shit going on. Michael Shank's another one to sit there and be like, you know what, I want
sold my sport. I got nubbed out of IMSA for this.
I got shanghaied out of fucking IMSA for this bullshit. You know what? Fuck off. I'm gonna go back to IMSA. All right. There's a lot of teams, right? You just the sense of, when we saw Michael Shank at Indianapolis back in September, or seeing Andretti's mannerisms whenever they had him on TV, or some of the stuff that's been posted, coming from the Andretti camp. It seems like they're getting really, really irritated with the way things are going, and I don't know where the influence is coming from, but I do have this motherfucker's name highlighted on here. His name is Mark Miles, and I haven't been a fan of this fuck at all, ever. All right, because this is the guy that is solely responsible for a lot of shit that happens with the series, with the speedway. He's basically Roger Penske's right-hand man. This asshole right here does this fucking survey every year after the season is over. I don't know if you guys have gotten the link to do the survey, but if you sign up for IndyCar, survey? Yeah, there's the fan survey. Now, I don't know how many.
I've gotten a fan survey.
Okay. I've get the fan survey. I've gotten it every year for about 5 years now, right? That company that does that shit, they take the survey and they go and do a whole bunch of analytics with it. You mean to tell me that my peers in IndyCar sit here and say the exact same thing that this fuck is saying down here? No. No. All right. I know a fuck ton of IndyCar fans, right? I've been to more IndyCar races than any other fucking motorsports on the planet. And I can tell you right now, there was a lot of animosity towards the IndyCar series. And then when people started jumping ship from kart over to the IRL series, they were still pissed off about it, but they're like, hey, you know what? My favorite team is here. Well, I hate to tell you, but your favorite team may or may not
May
be
not
a
be there
problem.
anymore.
It may or may not be a problem for the series, or may not be here much longer.
Mm-hmm.
All right? I understand it costs money to do, to race. We aren't in it hobby wise to make money. All right. There are hobbyists out there that run professionally. Look at, IMSA races. Look at fucking, was it a lot of the sports car, SCCA, NASA, all those, all right? They're all hobbyists, all right? They're not in it to make money. They want to do it, right? All the
And
fucking
if you need
hobby.
and if you need some names to go on with that, you had Tim Allen from Home Improvement. You had Peter Dempsey from what was it?
Grey's Anatomy.
From Grey's Anatomy. Really big name people, but you also have guys that don't have that pedigree to leverage their way in that way, that work their ways up and just say, you know what, I want to drive a race car, and they go out and they do it well.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I based my opinion of, if you do a charter system for the rest of the season, I do not care. But leave the Indy 500 as it is. The idea of tainting something that personifies the sport to the entire world as being the greatest spectacle in racing,
I don't care what Formula One says.
bar none. Formula One can argue. NASCAR used to have an argument. They no longer do. The tradition of getting up, watching the Indy 500, either followed or preceded by the Monaco Grand Prix in Formula One, it's one of the greatest days of racing
You get
across
3
the
races
entire
in one
world.
day.
You get 3 races in one day. You have the Monaco Grand Prix, the Coca-Cola 600, and the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah.
To taint that event specifically with a charter system is a travesty.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna throw this out here, right? This is why I didn't want to discuss this with you. Okay. Yesterday, and this is a thought process of mine that I'm gonna put it out on the table now. Okay. You two know how I operate my race team, how I operate my life. I go and analyze things. I look at it. I try to look at the big picture. All right.
Mhm.
Yes, there's the big picture, but I'm talking the big picture. Okay. Let me put this in your head, and I want immediate reactions to this. All right. One of you all is gonna sit here and be able to fester on it, and others are not. What if IndyCar is doing this to keep from being absolved by Formula One? As in, we are trying to keep the series alive, so we have an Indianapolis 500 because we are getting hounded by F1 to come into this country and basically take over open wheel racing.
As far as the thoughts of Liberty Media still being in a position to obtain the series, the thought of this being a defensive strategy is a pretty good option. It
Well,
is.
you know
It
that Liberty
is
Media is already in the IndyCar series.
right. I do
think-
realize that.
Yep, Michael Shank is sponsored by Liberty Media. Continue.
The thought of it being a defensive tactic is, quite frankly, ingenious, because that'll have a contract that with the drivers and the teams that will overarch any sort of
Merger or buyout.
merger or buyout and save the series as a whole. My question is, what's the long-term plan for that? Because this is a short-term defensive strategy in my mind that, yes, if we do this, we'll be able to hold out for however long the charter contracts remain. But is that only going to buy us 5, 10 years of top level open wheel racing in the United States?
Yeah.
Gary, your thoughts?
I mean, I think it is a tactic. I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one, but I could see them having this for however long they have the charter agreement. Let's say it's 10 years. After 10 years, who knows? Maybe Liberty Media doesn't want to buy the series anymore. Maybe in the middle of that, somehow there still is a buyout and Roger Penske sells the IndyCar series to somebody. Um, Personally, it, the Indy 500's got to work. Otherwise, it is in great jeopardy of going away. And then it not only messes with the city as far as that one big event, but you're creating a slippery slope there too, where is the speedway even going to stay open
$1.5 billion worth of business
every
is
year for the
generated
state?
in
For the
1
state,
month
yeah.
for the state of Indiana. All right, because of the Indianapolis 500.
And that's why we don't host WrestleMania, because we don't need them.
Oh,
I mean, I
Gary,
hate
I
to
just gotta
sound
shoot you.
cocky. I hate to sound cocky about it, but it's the truth. We don't
There's
need the WWE because we have the Indianapolis 500, and then on top of that, every 5 years we're guaranteed to host the NCAA tournament when it comes to the Final Four. I don't know how many millions of dollars that brings in, but I know it brings in a lot of freaking money into the state.
yeah, we're
So we
talking
don't
we're talking billions of
billions for
dollars.
both. Yeah,
Yeah,
for both.
and it's
Um,
tax
yeah,
revenue, whatever donations, shit like that. It's all there, and it's also goes towards the the local businesses, all that shit. All right. If it is a
Charlie
defense
Brown's makes a living in May.
if if this is a defense tactic, all right, the it looks pretty grim in the outlook on motorsports in the United States, in my eyes. That if it's used as a defense tactic, they get 10 years out of a deal, everything collapses, and Formula One ends up, or in Liberty Media ends up taking over open wheel racing in the United States. Which, I mean, shit, look at what they're doing right now. They went and applied for a patent for Chicago Grand Prix race. They've got 3 U.S. races right now, and they're looking for more. All right, why? They
Because they
they
want
they
oh,
they know that
they know what's going
the
on.
United States is the entertainment capital of the world. All right, we spend more money on professional
Sports,
entertainment in
right?
the here in the United States than any other country. All right,
That's true. I don't
other.
care if you're looking at racing, because we got all forms of racing right
Mhm.
there. You've got the NBA, you've got the NFL, you've got MLB, and don't even get me started into the college sports. You've got all that. I know technically
and
college is amateur, but we are the entertainment capital of the world when it comes to our sports.
and you have right now in motorsports, right off the top of my head, all right off the rip, without actually having to go through and digging things up. Chip Ganassi used to own professional sports teams. You have Spire that's still owning them.
Yep,
Roush Fenway, all right, with
with the Red
Boston Red
Sox.
Sox.
Yep,
All right. We had Steinbrenner's
go
kid own in racing. Um,
Yankees. Yep.
yep. Let's bring
Yeah, Joe
in
Gibbs with the Redskins, but he
Joe.
wasn't an owner. He was just a coach, but
Right.
sports connection.
All right.
If I
Go ahead.
if I could go in here, the thing that scares me the most about this, and this is going to kind of sound off topic for a minute, but being the lover of motorsports that I am, I follow motorsports across pretty much the entire globe. The Australian V8 Supercars Series, the Japan Grand Touring Championship, um, which is now, oh good lord, They've changed their name so many times since I've been alive. I can't remember what they currently are. Super GT. There we go. Super GT
Mm.
in Japan. Um,
which is now just GT3 cars like DTM.
Right. They run multiple classes, but what I'm getting at here is we've seen this from a different perspective with both of those series that I brought up before. You have two massive national series with Super GT and the Australian V8 supercars. They are notorious because they are the biggest events that are held in their respective countries. uh, Super GT tried to go international. I believe it was in the early 2000s, if not the early 2010s, and it failed miserably. They went back to being a national series, and they operated at a net loss for quite a while because they lost so much of the home crowd. The same thing also happened when they allowed international teams when they were still running Group C, GT1, and a couple other series to break out within the Super GT name. I can't remember what it. I believe it was the JGTC at the time. They lost that national audience. The same thing happened with V8 supercars almost to the T. My thought is with Formula One and Liberty Media going down this road that they are and forcing potentially Roger Penske and the IndyCar series to consider the charter system as a defense mechanism to being bought out if they are, to is that we're going to be seeing that from a different perspective, except it's going to have collateral damage. So Formula One is trying to expand into the American market, us being a very patriotic and
Traditional
nation
base.
loving society with the traditional base. um we're likely going to embrace F1 for what it is, but if
But for how
they're
long?
but for how long? If they choose to acquire the IndyCar licenses and things like that in in favor of moving that attention toward Formula 1, could that then have the collateral damage effect of completely destroying the IndyCar series in the process?
Well, a lot.
That is why this entire conversation is sprung up, not just with the charter system, but the further ramifications down the line.
Right. I mean, I know in the 40s and 50s, the Indy 500 used to be on the Formula One schedule back in the day,
They used to
but
come over here and bring their
and
cars
raced.
over, and we build cars to spec to them. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, do you know how many
Which it was
times
a
it's
different
been
world
brought?
then, though.
Do you know how many times it's been brought up, the comparisons between IndyCar and Formula One, and every time, like back in
Every time.
the 80s, it was IndyCar's faster than Formula One. 90s, it was the same way because if you took kart cars into effect, we had horsepower and we were faster than them. All right, and then the gradual changeover because of the kart IndyCar split. Um, we ended up going spec series, and they kept going with innovation until they finally said, you know what, fuck this innovation shit. We're just gonna go with, here you guys are gonna build within a window and have fun. And Formula One still has innovation and shit, but not to the degree that it used to be.
Absolutely.
But I mean, man, this is not without becoming, or going full on conspiracy theorist because you two know how I can be. But
Well, I mean, the theory that I just threw out there was pretty
yeah,
far fetched.
Up there.
but um, I'm starting to think that this is it's all in defense of what is inevitably gonna happen, and yes, there's change, and if you're trying to keep things going, then what's it gonna mean for the
The little guy.
for the little guy, right? The Indy 500 was always about
The underdog.
local Midwest underdogs building ship boxes and taking them and racing and winning. It changed in the 90s with the split. You were pretty much forced to, you know, run old equipment, or a lot of the little teams were forced to run old equipment until IndyCar came up with their chassis, and Kart still was doing a little bit of innovation here and there, but I don't know. I don't know if this is just me being an old fart, right? But and not wanting to change in tradition, but I was tired of the bullshit, and what with the things that I grew up with and the way they were ran compared to today, it's not right in my eyes. You can play the OK Boomer shit. I don't give a fuck, Gary.
NASCAR needs 5 lug nuts still.
What
Oh,
are
wait,
we
what?
saying, Boomer? Okay, Boomer.
I was waiting for him to play it too.
But I mean, I wasn't gonna play it because I agree with you. Like, play it for me too. That, I mean, I, I'm not one where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What did NASCAR do? They did away with their top 35 rule and switched to this charter system. Top 35 rule was fine. It all of motorsports just in general, like we've talked about the grassroots level, like with the dirt, with all the dirt stuff, and like the late model series needed an infusion of cash. All of motorsports just in general right now needs an infusion of cash, in my opinion.
Well, I'm gonna we're gonna end this for right now because it seems like we're just kind of doing what it.
Circling around.
Yeah. So Scott, you got any final thoughts that you want to throw out there?
My final thoughts, I'll basically just state what I've said the entire time, is if you have something that makes your sport special and that has garnered worldwide attention to the scale that IndyCar has with the Indianapolis 500, the idea of tarnishing that with this system is completely unacceptable. We've lost far too many traditions and really, really neat events to go to due to the bean counters cutting back on a lot of the fun stuff. And this is quite possibly one of the last standing traditions within motorsports that truly gets a worldwide audience on another level. We can't allow this to happen.
Agree.
Harry, your final thoughts?
I'm pretty much to echo what Scott said. I mean, this is like the last, even though it's not the same that it was 20 years ago, and it's definitely not the same as it was 40 years ago. Um, it's a big deal. You got to keep, somewhat of the tradition going. And with this charter system, I don't think we're going to see a lot of tradition. I think you're just going to see guys that are already locked into the race just focus on race trim all month, and they don't care if they start on the pole or start 33rd. They're in the race no matter what. And that's what scares me a little bit too. Is just the sandbagging that you'll probably see. But we can't control everything. I'm hopeful that these charters talks don't work at all. But who knows? We'll just have to wait out and see.
So, my final thought on everything, all right? And this pretty much blankets a lot of shit. We have tied ourselves down as a society to this being equal and not being the best we can be and not being innovative as a society and moving forward and advancing. If you were to make a precedent where you could start bringing back innovations, get rid of the fucking spec series fucking formula, go back to, all right, cool. Here's your set of rules. Work within those rules. And hey, if you get a little out of line, yeah, we're gonna sit here and say, okay, you know what?
Don't bring it back.
Don't bring it back, all right? Or we're gonna allow people to kind of stretch the rules a little bit more, or just go back to the way it was back in the 70s and 80s. Oh, hey, you know what? Fuck you. You didn't do good. Guess what? Try again. All right, you didn't learn my secrets. All right, go fuck yourself. All right, get fast, bud. All right, stop giving everybody a fucking participation trophy, and start having people think for them fucking selves, and let's advance even more. All right. When you had innovation, we had 3-liter V8s that could make 700 plus horsepower, all right, with very minimal turbo boost. Or you can go with the 2.8 liter engines that were making thousands of horsepower. All right? In the 90s. Where the fuck did that go? Yeah, okay, cool, they exploded. All right? But guess what? It was cool. Bring back innovation, bring back excitement, keep your traditions, and on that note, I'm gonna stop. Gary, you want to
All
close
right. Well,
this out?
thank you all. Thank y'all for listening in on this. I hope you've enjoyed the. I don't even know how long we've been live now. An hour.
Just short.
Uh, However long it's going to be after the edits and stuff. Thank you for listening to us. Um, we're hopeful that they don't go through with this charter system. Uh, Hopefully there's some kind of compromise somewhere. But until next time, thanks for listening to Off and Turn One. I'm Gary. That's Joe. That's Scott. Have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next time. And hopefully we'll have a little bit more positive news to share.
Fuck
See
you, Mark
ya.
Miles.